Hey guys, tonight we slip into the cracked stone alleys and flickering oil lamp world of ancient Rome to follow a day in the life of someone history rarely pauses to hear, a working prostitute in the heart of the empire. You're not a noble, not a soldier, not a senator. You're a woman with no last name, no social protection, and a public reputation somewhere between scandalous and invisible. And yet, like every Roman, your day begins early. You're already awake before the sun has fully risen. The rooster crows somewhere in the distance, competing with the bellow of a fishmonger and the metallic clatter of carts rattling over cobblestones. You blink up at a ceiling stained with smoke and rain seepage. You live in a cramped upper room of an insula, Rome's tenement housing. It's 5 flights up, and no, there's no railing. You share a paper-thin wall with a man who talks to his pet monkey and a midwife who never seems to sleep. Your straw mattress crackles under you as you shift, and the first thing you notice is the cold. Roman mornings can be damp, even in summer. Your joints ache. Your feet still throb from the day before. And your ankle bracelet, the one gift a client ever gave you, has left a faint mark in your skin from where you slept on it. There's no bathroom. You relieve yourself into a chamber pot, like everyone else, and pour a splash of vinegar water over your hands. Your washing ritual isn't glamorous, certainly not by modern standards. But for a Roman prostitute, surface beauty is armor. You rummage through your little wooden box and pull out your chalk powder, coal, and a suspiciously pungent jar of what passes for face cream. Some women use crushed oyster shells or barley paste. Others swear by crocodile dung, imported from Egypt, which allegedly keeps the skin smooth and desirable. Whether or not it works, you apply a little, because the man you'll meet today might be into exotic skincare. You rub a dab of saffron onto your cheeks for color. If you're lucky, someone might confuse it for a natural blush. The Romans loved their golden hues, fair skin was a mark of class. And you're not fooling anyone, but illusion is half the trade. Now you choose your wig. Your real hair is thinning, brittle from lime water, and lice are an ever-present threat. But wigs? Wigs are theater. You opt for a flame-colored one today, because nothing says, available, like the hair of a Vestal gone rogue. That's not just fashion, it's a subtle advertisement. Roman law required prostitutes to wear a toga, or at least a version of it. It was meant to visually separate you from respectable matrons, who wore the stola. You're not a wife. You're a service. And the uniform matters. There's a ragged old tunic slung over the edge of a cracked stool. You sniff it. Acceptable. You tighten the belt just above your hips, it lifts the hem enough to show a little ankle. Not too much. You've learned that mystery gets better rates. You sling a worn leather pouch around your waist. It carries your oil, your coins, if any, and a bronze hairpin that might also double as a weapon. Just in case. You creak open your front door, step over a drunk passed out in the stairwell, and begin your descent. The stairs are slick with something you don't identify. There's no such thing as a clean floor in this part of town. Outside, the Subura district is already buzzing. Shouting, stomping, the sound of water being sloshed into gutters. The scent of baking bread mixes with sewage and too many goats. As you walk, you pass the bakery, a one-room furnace where the baker's wife gives you the usual side-eye, and you consider whether you can afford a small loaf later. But first, work. And work means getting to your corner. You pass other women doing the same as you. Some are older, veterans of this life. Others are barely past girlhood, painted faces bright with the hope that today might be different. There are also lupi, streetwalkers named after the she-wolf, roaming alleyways with practiced howls. You give them a nod. You all share the same low rung. And here's the historical fact for tonight: in Rome, prostitution was legal. Not just tolerated, regulated. You could register with the aediles, get taxed, and be considered part of the working economy. But don't get too excited. Legal didn't mean respected. You were always infamous, a legal non-person. You couldn't testify in court. You couldn't inherit. You couldn't marry a citizen. Your very name was erased from the upward paths of Roman society. Still, Rome needed you. And not just for lust. The city's crowded, volatile, and hungry for distractions. You are one of them. Historians still argue whether prostitutes in Rome had any upward mobility. Some point to freed women who opened brothels, or courtesans who became mistresses to powerful men. Others insist those stories are the exception, fantasies Rome told itself to sugarcoat a cruel reality. Today, you're not thinking about legacy. You're thinking about where to stand. Your usual spot near the tavern is already taken by a redhead with louder jewelry. You hate her a little. So you move a few doors down, near a bakery window where the smell might make customers linger. It's a gamble. You take a deep breath. Your sandals stick slightly to the paving stones. A dog barks in the distance. A Roman day has begun, and so has yours. The smell of rising bread has done its job. A few men loiter nearby, pretending not to glance your way. You know the dance. It starts with that sideways look, that idle pacing. They're calculating: do they have the coin, are you worth it, is it worth the risk of being seen? But before the first bite of business, it's time for your daily transformation. Because being a Roman prostitute isn't just about surviving the streets, it's about controlling the image. An image is crafted with paste, pigment, and practiced illusion. You pull a small bronze mirror from your pouch. It's warped and pocked with green at the edges, but you've learned to angle it just right. Your fingers work quickly, tracing the lines of your eyes with powdered charcoal. Roman men like exotic. They say your eyes should speak, though, ironically, they rarely care what you say. Kohl deepens your stare and hides the sleepless shadows underneath. You press beeswax along your lips, then add a touch of red clay, today's version of lipstick. The effect is more unsettling than pretty, but unsettling sells. A toothpick carved from olive wood pokes from your pouch. You use it carefully, dental care is rare, and even a broken molar can sour a customer. You chew a sprig of mint, more hopeful than effective, and dab a little myrrh oil at your neck. It burns slightly. Might be the alcohol. Might be the rat bite from last week. Then comes the real decision, perfume or not. Roman perfumes are notoriously intense. One whiff too much and you smell like a funeral. Still, your tiny vial of nardus, probably diluted with donkey sweat, might land you a better paying client. You go for one drop behind the ear. Bold, but not desperate. Now you touch up your wig. It's slipping slightly. Real hair is expensive, and most prostitutes can't afford the finer ones made from blonde Gallic or German locks. Yours is dyed goat hair, tangled from the night before. You comb it with your fingers and pin it in place. You catch a glimpse of yourself in the bakery's polished amphora. Not bad. You've looked worse. A child scampers past, yelling about figs. A group of soldiers clatter down the road, the scent of sweat and bronze trailing behind. You reposition your belt, adjust your tunic to hint at cleavage, and assume the pose. Weight on one hip, arms loosely folded, eyes half-lidded like you're both amused and unimpressed. Marketing, Roman style. Your name today is Felicia. Yesterday it was Lana. Names mean nothing except what they evoke. Felicia sounds soft, lucky, maybe rich. You heard it once from a senator's daughter and stole it for yourself. Sometimes, clients want mystery. Sometimes, they want a story. You're happy to offer both, for a price. And here's a quirky tidbit: some prostitutes in Rome advertised their services with graffiti. Not just brothel walls, random street corners, pillars, even tombstones. A scribble might say, "I'm Fortunata, I pleasure for 2 asses." It's crass. It's bold. It's strangely entrepreneurial. You've thought about carving your name near the forum, but you're not sure how the guards would feel about it. A man approaches. Older, bearded, smelling faintly of garum, fish sauce. Always a gamble. He stops, pretends to study a crack in the wall, then clears his throat. "How much?" he mutters. You smile just enough. 2 sesterces. 1 for fast, 3 for nice. He laughs through his nose. He doesn't say yes, but he doesn't walk away. You've hooked him, and the game begins. Roman law forbids pimps from forcing women into the trade, but let's be real. It happens all the time. And so, some girls take control where they can. You're one of the lucky ones. You rent your own spot. That doesn't mean you're safe, or rich, or even stable. But it means you choose your name. You choose your prices. You choose how many lies to tell before lunch. Historians still argue whether prostitutes in Rome were truly independent. Some point to inscriptions where women declare themselves libertina meretrix, a freedwoman and prostitute. Others suggest that even those who bought their freedom were still economically trapped in the same brutal loop: dress up, smile, sell yourself, repeat. The fish sauce man hesitates, mumbles something about being late for work, and shuffles off. You don't chase him. Desperation never sells. Instead, you turn to the next potential mark, tall, curly-haired, wearing a cheap sword like it's decoration. Probably a soldier. Probably broke. But maybe generous. "Good morning, handsome," you purr, drawing one sandal along the stone like a cat stretching. He smiles. You've made the connection. Back in the alley behind the bakery, there's a shadowy nook barely big enough for 2. It smells like damp yeast and mildew, but it's private enough. Or private enough. There's no such thing as true privacy when you're working in the open-air brothels of Rome. It's over quickly. He's decent. Gentle, even. When he leaves, he tosses you a coin, and you make sure to bite it. Real bronze. Not a forgery this time. You pocket it and whisper a soft, "thank you," to no one in particular. You straighten your tunic, pat down your wig, and step back into the light. Another man's already eyeing you from across the road. Repeat, repeat, repeat. Some days, it's 3 clients by midday. Others, none. The fickleness of foot traffic is your economy. Sometimes it rains and you're soaked through before anyone makes an offer. Sometimes a wealthy man takes you away for an afternoon and pays you with actual silver. You've learned not to expect much. But you've also learned how to work a crowd. A woman walks past, her stola dragging lightly through dust. She looks at you the way a hawk looks at a mouse, detached, predatory, superior. You hold her gaze for just a second. Then you smile. Not because you want to. Because it unnerves them. And now the sun is rising higher. The day is heating. You wipe a bead of sweat from your brow and scan the road again. Your body is your tool, your storefront, and your prison. And it needs constant maintenance. Your sandals click against the uneven stone as you move slightly down the street. The corner's no longer pulling in the traffic you need, too many beggars nearby, and a flute player with more ambition than talent has settled into your echo zone. You need a better spot. Somewhere with both shadow and eyes. Welcome to one of the least glamorous truths of your profession, real estate. In Rome, even sex has a geography. You walk toward the Subura's edge, where taverns meet alleyways and the smell of fish sauce finally gives way to the richer stink of roasted meat and spilled wine. Here, the crowds get thicker, louder, and more unpredictable. You pass under laundry strung like desperate flags between buildings, sidestep a boy chasing a hoop, and make your way to your usual backup space, a crumbling column near a public latrine. It's not ideal, but the location has perks. There's shelter from sudden rain, and the crowd here tends to linger. Especially the kinds of men who stagger out of wine bars with loose coin purses and looser morals. They aren't the highest paying clients, but they're often the most consistent. And in your world, predictability is gold. You lean against the column, giving your posture just enough curve. You know how to angle your body like a question. One arm rests on your hip, the other toys absently with the bronze chain around your neck. This small act, casual, playful, is a performance. Everything you do out here is. You're selling a moment, a fantasy, even if it lasts all of 10 minutes. Nearby, a girl named Khalida eyes you with suspicion. She's younger, brasher, and far more willing to fight over turf. You give her a look that says not today. She scoffs, but doesn't press it. And here's your mainstream historical fact: Rome had officially recognized brothels, called lupaneria, but not all prostitutes worked in them. In fact, most worked like you do, independently, in the open, claiming whatever slice of pavement they could hold. Renting a legal brothel space meant dealing with fees, permits, and oversight. Out here, it's just you and the stones. That said, you've considered it. The lupaneria have fixed beds, doors, even graffiti that functions as marketing. Some have crude carvings to advertise services, a phallus here, a suggestive pose there. But those places are also controlled. Watched. And the Leno, the pimp or madam who runs them, always takes their cut. At least in the street, you keep what you earn. Most of the time. Historians still argue whether Rome's streetwalkers had more freedom than brothel workers. Some say you avoided formal oversight, avoided taxes, even avoided official registration with the aediles. Others argue that without any legal anchor, you were more vulnerable to abuse, theft, and random arrest. And then there are the debates about the fornaces, arched recesses under bridges and temples that served as informal workspaces. Technically public. Practically private. You've worked in one. Once. You still have a bruise from the wall. Your current corner's heating up. A pair of young men loiter nearby, discussing whether they're in the mood. One gestures toward you. You offer a smile. He shrugs. You know the type. Too drunk to decide, too sober to follow through. You ignore them and wait. Then, from down the road, a familiar figure appears, spurious. He's not a client, exactly. More like an occasional tipper who thinks he's a philosopher. Every few weeks he shows up, quotes Stoic maxims he clearly doesn't understand, and offers you half a loaf of bread and a handful of figs in exchange for conversation. Today's offering: grapes. Overripe, but sweet. You nod politely. He talks about the weather, about the Senate, about whether fate governs the universe. You murmur affirmations, chew slowly, and subtly scan the street for real business. A toga-wearing man appears. Older, with the kind of sandals that suggest moderate wealth and moderate shame. He pretends not to look at you. He walks past, then circles back. Twice. Spurious gets the message. He bows theatrically and vanishes into the crowd. You engage the man with a careful smile. Good day, citizen. He hesitates. Then, finally, how much for an hour? 5 sesterces, you say smoothly, and I'll pretend to enjoy your poetry. He laughs nervously. Not the worst sign. He leads you around the corner, toward a wine shop with a private booth in the back. The owner knows the drill. Slips you in, draws the curtain, says nothing. You make your business fast, efficient, professional. The man is gentle but tense. Says he's a merchant. You suspect he's lying. You're used to lies. Afterward, he offers 6 sesterces. A tip. Either he liked you, or he feels guilty. Either way, you accept with a nod and tuck the coin into your pouch. Real bronze again. You're on a streak. You emerge, straighten your belt, and take a breath. Back on the street, Khalida has moved downwind. A new girl has taken her place, blonde wig, olive skin, bright eyes. You nod at her. She doesn't nod back. You know how this works. You could fight over ground, scream about your spot, but the truth is, none of it's yours. Not really. The streets are Rome's, and Rome plays no favorites. You head back toward the bakery. Maybe it's still early enough to snag a crust of bread. Your stomach growls. You've earned at least that. And maybe, just maybe, you'll find another client before the sun hits high. The bakery's heat radiates out into the street like a warm embrace, but don't get too cozy, it's more oven exhaust than fresh hearth. You hover by the corner where the scent of warm grain lingers longest, hoping it lures a customer or at least masks your sweat. You're well into the morning now, and every part of you is beginning to ache, the kind of deep, invisible ache that comes from being looked at too much, too long, and too hungrily. A child walks by and mimics your posture, tossing his hip out in exaggerated fashion. His mother yanks him away and hisses something about filthy street women. You smile thinly. You've heard worse. Now it's time to work the crowd again, this time with flair. Because in your line of work, silence is death. So you start advertising the only thing you have, yourself. You raise your voice, sing-songy and sweet. I'm Felicia today. 1 coin buys a secret, 2 buys a smile, 3 buys the rest. It's performance, and you sell it with the confidence of someone who's memorized her lines 100 times over. Some women clap, whistle, or use a tambourine to get attention. You've seen others wear bells on their ankles. You keep it simple. Your voice and your wit are enough, most days. And here's the detail that never fails to amuse you: under Roman law, prostitutes were allowed, some say required, to wear the toga. Yes, the garment of the male citizen. That flowing, cumbersome, uncomfortable wool wrap was a signal: this woman is not a matron. She is not respectable. She is public. You wear a simplified version, lighter, looser, easier to slip out of when business calls. The irony doesn't escape you. In a world that praises modesty in wives and display in mistresses, your outfit is both a warning and a beacon. You catch a man's eye, thin, dusty tunic, possibly a laborer. He lingers too long before darting away. He's either shy or broke. Or both. So you shift tactics. You toss your hair, well, your wig, adjust your belt so your tunic rides up slightly, revealing a flash of thigh. Just enough to intrigue, not offend. That little sliver of skin might double your odds. It's not science, but it's close. A group of young men walks by, already tipsy though the sun is barely overhead. One of them barks like a dog. Another calls, "How much to bark back, she-wolf?" You could snap at them. You could spit. But that gets you nowhere. Instead, you smirk. Depends, can any of you afford a proper leash? His friends erupt in laughter. He blushes and shuffles away. You've won the moment. Not the money, but the moment. Then, a curious thing happens, a woman approaches you. She's richly dressed, gold rings, hair wound in careful curls. A matron, clearly. You brace yourself for the usual insult, or maybe a coin thrown at your feet as mock charity. But instead, she lowers her voice. "Do you speak Greek?" You blink. Enough to swear and pray. She smiles tightly. "Good. My husband fancies a bit of Athens in the bedroom." Ah. Not an insult. A request. You nod slowly. "I charge extra for reciting Homer during." She doesn't laugh. Just slips a small wax tablet into your hand. "This evening. The address is written here." She walks off without another word. It happens more often than you'd think. Rich women, bored or bitter, playing games behind closed doors. Sometimes they hire you for themselves. Sometimes for their husbands. Sometimes for revenge. You pocket the tablet and resume your pose. Here's a historical nugget for the curious. Many Roman prostitutes adopted stage names with Greek flair. Why? Because Greek culture was considered sophisticated, intellectual, even erotic. Calling yourself Chloe or Dion added a touch of mystery. You've used both. Once you even tried Sappho, though that backfired spectacularly with a client who assumed it meant something else entirely. Historians still argue whether these Greek personas were self-chosen or imposed by pimps trying to class up their inventory. Some inscriptions suggest women proudly declared themselves as Greek-born entertainers. Others read more like marketing tools, Lydia of Corinth, expert in flute and more. You'll let the scholars debate. You just know it works. Back on the street, things are heating up, literally and socially. The lunch crowd is trickling through. Drunk men looking for distraction. Bored slaves running errands. Merchants with just enough coin to feel powerful for an hour. You pick your targets carefully. One man stops and leers. You don't even flinch. Instead, you say, 3 sesterces, and I'll pretend I like your breath. He walks away, offended. Good. You didn't want that one anyway. Your voice gets louder as the crowd grows thicker. Come on, darling, don't be shy. For 4 sesterces I'll call you Mars and not laugh. Laughter from a passing baker. A wink from a tavern boy. Not all of this life is misery. Some of it is showmanship. Some of it, if you squint hard enough, even feels like power. Fleeting, fragile, but real. You adjust your tunic again. The sun's higher now. You'll need shade soon. But not yet. Not until you've made enough to buy lunch, and maybe a fresh comb for your wig, if today's truly lucky. You whisper under your breath the same little line you always do around this time: be charming, not cheap. Be quick, not careless. Be seen, but not caught. You scan the road again. And smile. The first man to stop is a soldier, or at least dressed like one. His armor is dusty, his eyes bloodshot, and his breath is what you'd call morally pungent. He's young, barely older than the wine stain on your tunic, and his grin is wide with the kind of stupid confidence that only comes from surviving a tavern brawl or drinking something that smelled like lamp oil. He leans in. You free, girl. You offer your default smirk. Not emotionally, but for 2 sesterces. I'm yours. He laughs and slaps your hip, not gently. You resist the urge to elbow him in the throat. This one's likely all noise, no coin. But just as you're about to brush him off, he digs into his pouch and pulls out a handful of dirty bronze. Show me where, he slurs. You sigh and gesture toward an alleyway 2 doors down, a space you've used before. It's narrow, shielded from street view, and not currently filled with fish guts, a miracle in itself. He follows you in, stumbles once, and immediately tries to grope before any terms are confirmed. Easy, you say, dodging his paw. Payment first, or you'll be making love to a pile of bricks. He frowns, then sloppily counts out 3 sesterces. Overpayment? Probably can't count. You pocket it before he notices. The act is quick, clumsy, and not particularly memorable, except for the part where he tries to quote Julius Caesar halfway through. You interrupt. Let's not finish that sentence just yet, soldier. He laughs again, then passes out against the wall. You leave him there. He'll wake up with bruises and confusion. Maybe he'll think you robbed him. Maybe he'll think you loved him. Either way, he's gone from your mind by the time you reach the street again. And here comes another one, this time a slave, judging by the collar and the cautious eyes. His tunic is clean, his hands are soft, and his voice is barely above a whisper. I have 1 coin. 1. You study him for a second. He's scared, nervous. Probably doing this on his master's errand, or maybe sneaking away between errands. 1 coin buys a kiss and a story, you say. Maybe 2 kisses, if you ask nicely. He nods eagerly. You lead him behind a wine cart, tucked in the shade. There's no touching, just talking. You lean in, tell him some made-up tale about a merchant who fell in love with a she-wolf. He listens like it's a temple sermon. When he leaves, he bows. Not every transaction is physical. Sometimes, men pay to feel seen. Or to feel above you. Same price either way. Here's your mainstream historical fact: Roman prostitutes served all classes. Slaves, freedmen, senators, foreigners. There was no exclusivity to sex work in the empire. What changed was the setting, and the price. The cheap street walkers, like you, served anyone with coins and guts. The more expensive meretrices, sometimes educated, entertained noblemen in villas or private chambers. Some even recited poetry. You've recited parts of Virgil, badly, while pretending to care. Sometimes they tip better for Latin. Still, for every senator with sensitive tastes, there are 10 drunk sailors who think hygiene is optional and foreplay is a shoulder shove. Historians still argue whether Roman men viewed prostitutes as part of daily life or as taboo indulgences. Surviving literature is contradictory. Satirists mocked men who visited brothels while emperors funded public lupanaria with state taxes. Cicero, of course, claimed visiting prostitutes was a natural outlet for young men. Easy for him to say. He didn't have to sponge fish sauce off his own thighs after lunch. As the sun climbs higher, your feet begin to throb. The paving stones are baking hot. You shift from one sandal to the other, trying to keep the blisters from forming. Too late for that, though. You've already felt the sting of rubbed raw skin. You lean back against the bakery wall, half in shadow. A fig vendor offers you a bruised fruit in exchange for a smile. You take it. Bite down. It's sweet and soft, and the seeds crunch between your teeth. Two boys walk by, whispering about the she-wolves by the baths. They're barely old enough to shave, but old enough to leer. You wink at them. They bolt. You laugh. It feels good to laugh. Even if it's dry and brief and disappears quickly. Then comes your favorite kind of customer, the quiet man with clean fingernails. He doesn't talk much. Doesn't leer. He just walks up, looks you in the eye, and says, "How long can I have?" You tell him your rate. He nods. Pays. And follows. You lead him to the small rented room above a fishmonger's shop, one of your safe spaces. The bed is straw. The window opens to a brick wall. But there's a door that closes. That's luxury. He lies beside you. Asks nothing. Just rests a hand on your arm. Do you ever wish you were somewhere else? He asks. You smile. Like where? Athens? Alexandria? Anywhere with clean feet? No, he says. Just, not here. You nod. That, you understand. After, he leaves without a word. You count the coins. 7. He overpaid. You'll use it to buy a better wig, or shoes that don't cut your heels like knives. You tuck the money away, sit on the edge of the bed, and breathe. Outside, Rome continues to roar. But for a minute, your world is quiet. Back on the street, the scent of roasting meat drifts past your nose, some tavern's midday special. Your stomach growls like a gladiator denied his rations. You debate whether to spend 2 coppers on stew or save it for wine. Wine usually wins. Hunger dulls slowly. Loneliness does not. A couple of matroni pass by in veils, sneering subtly as they pretend not to see you. Their hair is coiled in sculpted layers, their sandals soft and spotless. You wonder if their husbands have ever visited your alley. Odds are good. Here's something the historians rarely write about: Rome had registered prostitutes. The state kept rolls, official ledgers of sex workers who paid taxes and were legally permitted to ply their trade. Some scholars argue this was a way of maintaining public morality. You laugh at that idea. Rome's morality was as flexible as your knees. You're not registered. Too poor to bribe the registrar, too proud to be owned. That means you're technically illegal, though no one enforces it unless they need a scapegoat. The law is a net with holes, and you're one of the fish that keeps slipping through, until one day you don't. A fellow street girl named Livia once got arrested during a temple festival. She'd set up shop near the sacred steps of Juno's shrine. Bad luck. Too much visibility. The magistrate made an example of her. Whipped her in the forum. After that, she vanished. Some say she drowned herself in the Tiber. Others say she married a baker in Ostia. You hope it's the second story. You like happy endings, even the improbable ones. Around the 6th hour, the heat becomes unbearable. Even the dogs melt into shadows. You press a damp cloth to your chest, wishing it were ice. An older woman across the street, a retired courtesan, maybe, or just another version of your future, sits on a stool fanning herself with a palm frond. She doesn't try to sell. She's too tired, or too wise. You think about what you'll be when your hips start to ache and your eyes lose their luster. Maybe you'll become a midwife. Or a fortune teller. Or one of those women who sells herbal potions and cures for love. You already know how to fake sincerity. That's half the work. But not yet. You're still young, still firm in the places that sell best. For now, your life is measured in glances and groans, in coins dropped onto floorboards, in moments of softness that never last more than an hour. Evening brings a new kind of danger, drunkenness, jealousy, and boredom. 3 ingredients for violence. A client once followed you home. Not for more, just out of curiosity, he said. You threatened him with a kitchen knife and a story about your cousin the ex-legionary. He backed off, thankfully. But it reminded you, your body isn't yours unless you fight for it. Most of the girls you knew starting out are gone. Some married. Some dead. A few ascended, wealthy men's mistresses with silk sheets and scented oils. You wonder if they missed the street. Probably not. But maybe they missed the freedom of it, the raw, untidy rhythm of survival. You can go anywhere when you're at the bottom. Up is always an option. Another man approaches. Well-dressed, too much perfume. He doesn't ask your name, just lifts your chin and inspects your face like produce. I want something exotic, he says. You grin. Good news. I speak 3 dialects and I'm left-handed. Does that count? He doesn't laugh. Of course not. I mean foreign. Ethiopian, maybe. Syrian. You shrug. Sorry, just Roman decay today. Imported girls are more expensive. Try the baths. He tosses a coin anyway and walks off. You don't chase it. Pride isn't a luxury you always have, but today, it wins. As twilight bleeds into night, the torches are lit along the avenue. Shadows deepen. Men begin to look different, sharper, hungrier. You fold your arms and keep your back to the wall. You'll try for one more client before calling it. One more and you can afford both bread and wine. A boy runs past, knocking over a crate of dates. The seller curses. You smile. Life spills out in Rome whether you want it to or not. You look up at the sky. Just a sliver of it, cut between tenements and balconies. A single star flickers into view. You don't make wishes anymore. But you do pause long enough to feel the breeze move through your hair and think. I'm still here. And tomorrow, maybe, you will be again. You're sitting at the edge of a low couch in a triclinium, a Roman dining room where every angle smells like spiced wine and perfume that's trying far too hard. It's early evening, and the air is thick with warm oil, laughter, and someone's attempt at playing the panpipes. Welcome to the world of Roman dinner parties, lavish, exhausting, and occasionally dangerous if you're one of the working girls. This is where you earn your bread and your bronze. You've washed off the grime of the day, dabbed your best patchouli scented oil behind your ears, and slipped into something that toes the line between elegant and scandalous, think tunic with one too many missing pins. You're not just here for bedroom business. You're part performer, part companion, part verbal sparring partner. And if you're clever, you might leave with a fat purse, or at least an unopened amphora of wine. Roman elite dinner parties, or convivia, aren't just about food. They're status performances. Guests recline on couches in togas and tunics, and in between courses of dormice stuffed with minced pork and honeyed figs, someone has to keep the mood lively. That someone is often you. You begin by laughing at the host's terrible joke, something about senators and sheep, and refill his wine before he notices it's empty. The table is a battleground of ego and ego polishing, and your role is to subtly steer conversation, flatter the dull, and insult the pompous just enough to seem witty, not suicidal. If you play your cards right, you can become a regular fixture at these gatherings. Not just a hired woman, but a meretrix docta, a learned courtesan. Someone who can quote Ovid, discuss horoscopes, and make veiled comments about imperial scandals without blinking. These women weren't common streetwalkers, they were paid for their minds as much as their bodies. Well, mostly. One scholar even argued that some of them were closer to therapists with good hair. Historians still argue whether these elite companions were respected or merely tolerated curiosities in upper-class circles. Now, not all dinner parties are held by aging senators with gout and a taste for imported oysters. Some are hosted by upwardly mobile freedmen trying to prove they've made it. These events are rowdier, flashier, and usually involve someone accidentally setting their toga on fire. Here, you might be expected to sing, dance, or tell a particularly raunchy story about a gladiator who couldn't keep his gladius in his tunic. You glide from guest to guest, offering sly commentary, maybe touching a hand here or brushing a knee there, not enough to provoke a wife into a scene, but enough to hint at possibilities. Flirting is your second language. You can do it while refilling wine jugs, avoiding the overenthusiastic poets, and dodging lecherous looks from across the table. And if someone gets too handsy, you've learned to redirect with grace, and if necessary, a jab to the ribs with a bronze serving spoon. Discreetly, of course. You notice the social ladder playing out like a theater production. At the top, the host and his honored guests. In the middle, merchants, retired soldiers, philosophers who haven't been paid in months. At the bottom, musicians, entertainers, and, well, you. But in this strange hierarchy, your status isn't fixed. You can climb, or fall, based on your wit, your alliances, and how well you handle a drunk equestrian who thinks he's Caesar. There's a rumor tonight that someone brought an exotic dancer from Egypt. She's wearing gold coins as a belt and has a trained monkey that drinks wine. You smirk, cute trick. You've seen stranger. Last week, a senator's cousin tried to impress everyone by reciting Virgil from memory while naked and covered in saffron. He misquoted 4 lines and threw up in a potted plant. You helped clean up. Got a bonus for it. And this is the part of the night where it gets blurry. Some guests begin pairing off. A nod, a smile, an offer. You're not obligated, not unless it was agreed beforehand. But if you choose to, you can vanish behind a curtain with someone who promises coin or favor. Or you can simply linger, sip watered wine, and bask in your role as the clever, indispensable woman in the corner, the one who sees everything, says little, and forgets nothing. There are risks. Sometimes these parties end badly. Fights, jealousy, poisonings. One poor girl last year drank from the wrong cup and didn't wake up. No one ever said being clever in Rome guaranteed safety. Just slightly better odds. As the oil lamps burn lower and someone starts weeping into a fig tart about lost love, you gather your things. Maybe you scored well tonight, gifts, gossip, a few solid leads. Maybe it was just another night of laughter, balancing acts, and subtle performances. Either way, you made it through without offending anyone powerful, which in itself is a small miracle. You step outside into the night air, cooler now, and listen to the sounds of Rome winding down, carts creaking, distant laughter, a temple bell. Your feet are sore. Your mind is sharp. And tomorrow, you'll do it all again. Or maybe something completely different. That's the trick to surviving this life. Be unpredictable. Be essential. And always, always know who's watching. It's just after dawn in Rome, and the city is stirring to life. As others roll off their straw mats and shuffle toward latrines, you're already out the door. Not to earn coin this time, but to spend it. Because being a prostitute in ancient Rome wasn't just about surviving day to day. It was also about managing the precarious balancing act of finances, image, and reputation, if only among your clients and competitors. Your first stop. The bathhouse. Yes, even the lower classes visit public baths. And if you're smart, you go early, before the crowds and the leering stares. You pay the modest entrance fee, slip out of your tunic, and join the swirl of bodies in tepid pools and steam-filled rooms. For a few coins, you can scrub off the grime of last night, soak your aching joints, and pretend you're a senator's wife. Clean, perfumed, and dressed in your less suggestive daytime tunic, you head into the marketplace. Not to flirt or solicit, not yet, but to take care of the quiet business of keeping up appearances. You buy fresh garum for your evening bread. You haggle for a bit of imported Egyptian eyeliner, the kind the wealthier men seem to like. And if business was good this week, you might even visit a cloth seller for a second-hand stolia or colorful sash. You pass other women like you. Some are older and tired, with faces that speak of long nights and short tempers. Others are younger, bolder, still new to the game. There's an unspoken understanding, a nod, a half-smile. Competition, yes, but also community. You trade tips in passing, which bathhouse is safer after dark, which magistrate is arresting streetwalkers this week, who's paying in counterfeit coins. Around midday, you stop for a simple meal, bread, a bit of cheese, maybe some dates. You eat sitting on a step outside a temple, careful not to offend the gods, but equally careful not to seem too pious. After all, the gods might look favorably on your profession, or they might smite you just for the amusement. If you're ambitious, and you are, you spend some of the afternoon tending to clients. Not physically, but politically. Maybe you visit the home of a merchant who owes you a favor. Maybe you slip a gift to the gatekeeper of a senator's villa, so he remembers your name when the old man grows lonely. Maybe you draft a cheeky little verse to be posted on a wall near the forum, something clever enough to draw attention but vague enough to avoid a fine. Because that's part of it too, marketing. Some prostitutes carve their names and prices into walls, or hire poets to write saucy graffiti about their skills. One girl even hired a flute player to perform outside her favorite brothel, drawing a crowd with music and charm. You prefer word of mouth. Whispered compliments, repeat customers, the kind of subtle fame that means you never have to yell your name in the streets. In the late afternoon, you stop by the laundress. She's scrubbed your tunic with Fuller's Earth, a strong-smelling mixture of clay and urine, but it works. You hand over your coins, wrinkle your nose, and thank her anyway. Smelling faintly of ammonia is a small price to pay for not appearing like a beggar. And if you're lucky, truly lucky, you might have a regular patron. A man who likes your company enough to see you weekly, or even provide housing. Not quite a concubina, not quite a mistress, but something in between. You tread carefully. Too much affection and you risk delusion. Too little and you risk being replaced by someone younger with brighter teeth. Back home, in your rented single-room insula, you count your earnings for the day. You stash a few coins in a clay jar hidden beneath a loose tile. Rainy days come quickly in this city, and when they do, you'd better have something saved, or know how to pick pockets without getting caught. You patch a tear in your cloak. You rub olive oil into your cracked heels. You practice a new flirtatious laugh in the reflection of a bronze mirror. Life as a Roman prostitute is about maintenance. Not just of the body, but of the mask you wear, alluring, quick-witted, untouchable. Outside, the sun lowers beyond the rooftops. Somewhere, a neighbor argues with her mother-in-law. A cat screeches. A drunk sings something about Mars and missed opportunities. You lie on your mat, stare at the cracked ceiling, and breathe. This isn't the glamorous life promised in myths or romantic scrolls. But it's yours. You've survived another day. And in this city, that's worth more than most realize. By now, you know the rhythm of the Roman day. You wake, you bathe, you charm, you perform, you survive. But tonight brings a different kind of challenge, not a drunken soldier or a stingy senator, but something far more insidious, the law. You didn't forget. You can't forget. You're registered. That's right, prostitutes in ancient Rome were often required to register with the aediles, the officials who oversaw public order and morality. It's all very bureaucratic. Your name, your profession, your chosen moniker, all scrawled into a dusty logbook, sandwiched between tax records and grain quotas. You remember the day you registered. It was anticlimactic. No ceremony, no judgment. Just a scribe yawning behind a desk and scratching your alias into history. You chose something theatrical, Fortunata, maybe, or Lupa, because no one wants to sleep with a Claudia who sounds like she collects pottery. And the moment your name went in that book, your legal standing changed. You're no longer just a citizen. You're infamous. A legal category unto itself. It means you can't testify in court. You can't inherit property. You can't marry a respectable Roman man, even if he's hopelessly in love with you, which, let's be honest, he probably is. But tonight, being registered becomes more than a footnote. A patrol of lictors walks past your insula. You can hear their staffs tapping in rhythm, echoing off the narrow stone walls. There's a curfew on certain days, days of public mourning, or religious festivals when all indecency must vanish like smoke. And yet here you are, painting your eyes with soot and planning to sneak out. You don't work during official mourning days, not because you care about tradition, but because getting caught could mean trouble, a fine, a beating, or worse, exile from the city walls. But there's a loophole, of course. There's always a loophole in Rome. You slip out the back entrance, wrapped in a more modest tunic, and tell the doorman of a certain domus that you're a seamstress delivering late-night mending. He winks. You both know the game. Inside, the party is in full swing. This isn't a brothel, it's a private villa, owned by a man too rich to care about laws and too bored to obey them. Musicians play, wine flows, and laughter bounces off marble columns. You're not the only one who's bent the rules tonight. Still, you must be careful. One wrong word, one jealous glance, and another woman might report you to the magistrates. Rivalry in your profession isn't just about seduction, it's about survival. You remember one girl who accused another of working unregistered. She vanished for weeks. When she returned, she had a limp and avoided alleyways like they were traps. You navigate the villa like a practiced ghost, smiling, touching, suggesting. You entertain without overstepping. Because you've done your reading, metaphorically speaking. You know which men here have political clout. Which wives turn a blind eye. Which ones keep a dagger tucked in their sandals. And here's the irony, in a city where you're labeled infamous, where the law tells you you're less than human, you still hold immense social power in private. Senators tell you secrets while their wives pray to Juno. Magistrates pay you to humiliate them. Even philosophers, those self-important scribblers, whisper theories of desire into your ear like you're a muse. But you always remember, it's power with an expiration date. The moment your youth fades, or you fall out of favor, or you make one rich man feel embarrassed, it's over. The same men who called you Venus will call you filth. The same women who envied you will rejoice in your ruin. And the same law that once forced you to register will abandon you when you're no longer profitable. Later that night, back in your insula, you reflect on your place in this city. Legally, you're marginalized. Socially, you're both despised and desired. Morally, you're blamed for things Rome itself created. You lie back on your mat. Your hair still smells faintly of spikenard oil. Your feet ache. Your purse is heavier. That's something. Outside, the law still breathes its cold breath down your neck. But for tonight, it hasn't caught you. Tomorrow, we'll see. Another warm Roman morning creeps into your insula like an unwelcome lover, unwashed and far too early. But today is not like the others. Today, you've been summoned. Not by a client, not by your old madam, not even by the landlord with his ever-growing list of imaginary repairs. No, today's invitation came by whisper and by wine. A senator wants your company. Not in the usual way, but for a private symposium. With his friends. And his wife. Yes, his wife will be there. You think either this is a trap, or an opportunity. Possibly both. You wrap your stola with more care than usual. It's borrowed, of course, from a neighbor who occasionally trades clothing in exchange for beauty tips and gossip. You paint your lips with crushed red ochre and darken your lashes with soot. Your appearance today must strike a delicate balance, beautiful enough to distract, refined enough to blend, restrained enough not to offend. As you walk through the bustling market square, your thoughts aren't on sex or survival. They're on performance. Because what many forget about Roman prostitutes, especially the high-end ones, is that you're not just selling flesh. You're selling fantasy. And in this case, that means stepping into a role more nuanced than any tragedy at the theater of Pompey. You arrive at the Domus. Marble floors. Bronze statues. A fountain with a boy frozen in the act of pouring wine. You're greeted not as a whore but as a guest. This unsettles you more than you'd like to admit. The senator's wife is younger than you expected. Pretty, but fragile. She looks at you not with disdain but with curiosity. Like she's studying a lion in chains. Or maybe an oracle. Dinner is served. Not reclining on couches, not tonight, it's a seated affair, more Greek than Roman, which already tells you the senator fancies himself a philosopher. Figs soaked in honey. Dormice stuffed with nuts. Truffles shaved into oily broth. Your stomach swirls, not with hunger, but with caution. Conversation begins. And you, the registered meretrix, are invited to speak. You joke. You flatter. You parry innuendos with the finesse of a poet. And when one of the older men tries to corner you with a crude remark, you turn it into a metaphor about Mars and Venus that makes the whole table laugh, except the wife. She's watching you. Still studying. After dinner, the mood shifts. Music starts. The wife touches your wrist gently, asks if the stories are true. You know which one she means. That you learned poetry from a retired playwright. That you quote Catullus during pillow talk. That you once seduced a priest out of his vows with nothing but eye contact and a peeled fig. You lie, of course. Or maybe you tell the truth. At this point, even you don't know where the boundary is. The senator joins you both. His touch is warm, practiced. The wife does not flinch. Tonight's arrangement becomes clear, you're here to open their marriage. You've seen this before. Bored elite. Curious wives. Power disguised as play. But here's the twist, you're the only one not pretending. You guide the moment, not just physically, but emotionally. You tell the wife how beautiful she is, and you mean it. You direct the senator gently, ensuring no one's boundaries are crossed. You choreograph the entire encounter like a priestess officiating a secret rite. And when it's over, they both look at you with something like gratitude. Not because of the act, but because of the intimacy you created, one they couldn't reach without you. Later, you walk home under torchlight, sandals slapping against stone. You're not richer in coin, this was more of a favor than a transaction, but richer in something else. Reputation. Access. Influence. You've been in a senator's bed and heart, and if you're lucky, that memory will linger. That's part of the game in your world. You sell more than sex. You sell therapy. Novelty. Art. Connection. A moment where someone important feels human. And you remain outside of it. A witness. A mirror. A ghost. When you finally lie down to sleep, the sounds of the city settle into a warm hush. A dog barks. A lute plays somewhere far off. The smell of olive oil and rosewater clings to your skin. And you think, for all the ways this city tries to own you, through laws, lust, or laughter, it never quite does. Because you, too, are a Roman invention. And Romans? They love their myths. You wake to the sound of shouting, again. But it's not a lover's quarrel or a drunk stumbling down the alley this time. It's the neighbors. And the baker's apprentice. And the local washerwoman. All talking over each other about the same thing, the Vestal Virgin scandal. Apparently, one of Rome's sacred six has been caught. With a man. The details are still murky, but the consequences? Oh, those are as predictable as sunrise, buried alive for her, death by flogging for him. You sigh. Another day in a city where virtue is a performance and punishment is a public spectacle. As a prostitute, you're used to being the cautionary tale. Your body is regulated, taxed, and ridiculed in the street. But if a Vestal steps out of line, God's help us all. You, meanwhile, are not held to such divine standards. You are flesh, not symbol. Still, their drama is your theater. Today, you're meeting your friend Livia. She's a different sort of woman, a lupa, like you, but she leans toward the more theatrical side. She performs at feasts, sings songs with double meanings, and wears bells on her ankles to draw attention. While you focus on subtle seduction and storytelling, she embodies loud joy. Together, you make a fine pair. You're walking with Livia through the forum, watching politicians pretend to argue and philosophers pretend to care. She whispers the newest gossip about a tribune who's taken a liking to young boys and an old senator who's fallen for his slave. Everyone's perverted, she says, but only some of us are honest about it. You both laugh, not because it's funny, but because it's true. You exist in the strange liminal space between scandal and necessity. Everyone comes to you for what they won't admit needing. Everyone judges you for what they desperately want. Later that afternoon, you head toward the Subura to visit an older woman, a retired meretrix named Varia, who once owned an entire street's worth of rooms and girls. Now she sells incense and ointments, claiming to have studied with an Egyptian priest. She says frankincense clears the air after heavy sex, and that myrrh keeps away bad spirits. You're not sure about the spirits, but the scent does soothe your nerves. Varia tells you that she's heard whispers. A new magistrate wants to tighten restrictions on registered prostitutes, maybe even ban them from temples and theaters again. You grimace. It's always the same, crackdowns followed by indulgence. Punishment followed by purchase. You ask her if it was always like this. She smirks. No. Sometimes it was worse. Varia pours you wine steeped in herbs and tells stories of her youth, of orgies in Etruscan villas, of Roman generals weeping into her lap before battle. She tells you about her friend who fell in love with a client and disappeared. Maybe she married him. Maybe she ended up in the Tiber. You'll never know. That night, you work. Not with senators or couples this time. Just a merchant, soft around the middle, hands like bread dough. He's kind enough, pays in advance, and brings figs. You don't fake passion tonight. Instead, you offer comfort. Warmth. A sort of sleepy sweetness. He says he hasn't been touched in months. His wife died. His daughters are married. He's alone. You hold him. You tell him he smells like lavender. You don't mean it, but it makes him smile. When he leaves, you sit quietly, looking out your window. Rome sparkles under the moon. Not clean, not noble, but alive. It pulses with lies and longing, gods and gossip. And you are part of it all, on the edge, always watching, always weaving stories with your body and your voice. You lie down and breathe deeply. The wine makes your eyelids heavy. You think of Varia, and Livia, and even that Vestal Virgin, trapped under Rome's impossible ideas of purity. And you think, maybe the only honest women in this city are the ones they call impure. Sleep comes, and with it, silence. You wake slowly this morning, wrapped in your wool blanket like a cocoon, limbs heavy and brain fogged. Outside, the city groans awake, merchants unbolting stalls, the clatter of pottery, the bark of a stray dog already chasing its breakfast. You stretch, feel the creak in your hip, and groan. You're getting older. Not old, but old enough for your knees to protest every marble stair in this cursed city. And today, you've decided, is not for work. Some days you simply can't. Not emotionally, not spiritually, and certainly not physically. You're not a gladiator. You don't perform on command like some trained animal. Today is for the other kind of survival, rest. You pull the curtain closed and lie back on the straw-stuffed mattress, letting yourself doze until the sun is higher in the sky. The birdsong shifts into hawking and yelling, and your stomach growls. Hunger is the only god you consistently pray to, and it answers. You dress lazily in a faded stola and wander down to the corner bakery. It smells like scorched grain and hot oil, divine. You hand over a small coin for a still warm honey cake and eat it leaning against a crumbling wall, barefoot, watching life pass by. The cobbler next door is arguing with his apprentice again. The same argument, every time, something about soles too thin or stitching too thick. Across the way, a mother is dragging 3 children and a goat through a mud puddle while shrieking at someone you can't see. You chew slowly. Rome is chaos, always. But on days like today, it's background music. After breakfast, you head to the bathhouse. Not one of the grand ones where senators sweat out their sins in perfumed steam, but a small neighborhood balneum. It's cleaner than expected and mercifully uncrowded. You strip without shame. Modesty isn't part of your trade or your temperament. You ease into the warm pool, muscles unknotting one by one. An old woman beside you is humming something tuneless. You close your eyes and float. For a moment, you are not a prostitute. You are water and breath and body. Afterward, you rub yourself down with oil and let one of the attendants scrape it off with a strigil, half massage, half exfoliation. It leaves you raw and pink and slightly reborn. You like that feeling. You head back to your insula, hair damp, skin tingling. Livia's waiting at your door. She's already in full paint, cheeks rouged, lips stained with crushed berries, eyes lined with soot and charcoal. She's going to a banquet later, one of those raucous private ones with too much wine and not enough sense. I brought you something, she says, grinning. You raise an eyebrow. She pulls a little pouch from her sleeve and opens it dramatically. Inside, a silver charm in the shape of a figure. Vulgar. Absolutely perfect. You laugh out loud. I saw it and thought, that's her, shameless and full of seeds. You hug her. You're not always tactile, but Livia is the kind of friend who deserves it. You decide to join her for a bit, just to listen to the pre-party gossip. The two of you walk toward the Aventine, where the wealthy throw their decadent gatherings. On the way, Livia tells you about a Greek who offered to pay her with a marble bust of himself. She declined. Barely. When you reach the domus, she disappears inside, and you linger at the gate. You're not in the mood for performance tonight. Instead, you walk the long way home through winding alleys and shadowy corridors of graffiti-covered stone. Rome's walls talk, you've always said. They whisper insults and confessions alike. You pass scribbles like, Lucius screwed here, twice. Chione is a goddess in bed. Beware of Marcus. He pays in promises. You stop at one message in fresh red paint. Love is a battlefield. So is the bed. You chuckle. Maybe you wrote that one on a drunken dare. Hard to say. Back in your room, you light a small lamp and take out your little stash of keepsakes, a necklace from a Gaul who cried after every climax, a carved comb gifted by a widowed baker, a scroll of bad poetry from a man who fancied himself your muse. You keep them not because they're valuable, but because they remind you that even in the most transactional moments, something human sometimes slips through. That's the part you cling to. You make yourself a small dinner, boiled lentils with a few wilted greens and a splash of fish sauce. It's not glamorous, but it fills the void. You sit on the windowsill with the bowl in your lap, watching the city settle. Some nights are filled with sound, laughter, fighting, music, crying. But tonight, there's a hush. A wind moves through the city like a ghost, rustling togas on laundry lines, lifting the scent of baking bread from distant ovens. You feel it in your bones, this is a night to remember. Not for its excitement, but for its peace. You pour a little wine and sip slowly. No one's coming tonight. No footsteps on the stair, no whisper through the curtain, no coins pressed into your hand. You're alone. And for once, it feels like a gift. You lie down with your new charm clutched loosely in one hand, your hair still smelling faintly of lavender from the bathhouse. You think about Livia dancing for fools. You think about Varia and her incense. You think about every man who ever called you sacred or sinful, usually both. You wonder if anyone will remember you after you're gone. Not your name, maybe, but the echo of your laughter, the warmth of your touch, the curve of your back in someone's fading memory. You don't believe in the gods much anymore, but you whisper a soft prayer anyway, to Venus, to Fortuna, to anyone who might be listening. Let me be remembered kindly. You close your eyes, and sleep takes you like a gentle tide. The sun is slipping behind the tiled roofs of Sabura now, and you're trailing a threadbare cloak around your shoulders as you follow the crowd toward the campus martius. There's a pulse to this place after dusk, a sense that everything forbidden or frowned upon during the day now stretches its arms and comes out to play. And among the poets and pickpockets, gamblers and gladiators, the Roman prostitute slips back into the shadows, sometimes literally. You pass under the tall, soot-streaked arch of a bathhouse, where earlier in the day, deals were struck in whispers behind steam-draped columns. But the bathhouse has another life at night. Here, balneae nocturni, midnight baths, aren't for hygiene anymore, but for social play. Prostitutes who've secured patrons earlier in the day might join them in the tepidarium, oils glinting under flickering torches, wine flowing freely, rules, if any, softening with the light. Not everyone gets invited to such warm, perfumed interiors. Many sex workers in Rome's lower tiers now return to cramped lodgings in tenement buildings, shared with other girls, maybe a barber, a retired gladiator missing 3 teeth, and someone's cousin from Gaul who never stops cooking fish. It's loud. It's sweaty. You don't get to pick your roommates. For others, the night is just beginning. You circle back to the Lupanar, those purpose-built brothels where business runs on a 24-hour cycle. Walls scrawled with graffiti, some crude, some suspiciously poetic, oil lamps swaying from hooks, the hum of voices negotiating, bickering, laughing. You catch a glimpse of the madam counting coin in a back room while her girls freshen their coal in polished bronze mirrors. And here's where things get blurry, both morally and historically. Historians still argue whether nighttime clients were of a more dangerous sort, or if, ironically, the dark offered a bit more safety, less scrutiny, fewer patrols, a touch more anonymity. It's possible that late-night clients were the wealthier ones, avoiding daytime scandal. Or maybe it was the drunks, slurring Latin through wine-stained lips and tipping in chicken bones. If you're on the street corner near the Circus Flaminius, you're rubbing tired feet, watching charioteers stagger out of a tavern. You've learned to read their swagger, who's just drunk enough to be generous, who's too drunk to notice if you slip a few extra coins from their tunic. You're calculating risk like a mathematician with mascara. And now we must speak of the disguises. Some prostitutes dressed as priestesses, draped in layers of gauzy white, pretending a hint of piety might make their act more mysterious. Others borrowed the armor of men, literally, posing as soldier girls in breastplates and sandals, offering a fantasy wrapped in Roman conquest. One woman, according to a scrap of Seneca's complaint, even claimed she was a Vestal virgin. That went over about as well as you'd expect. Mocking Rome's sacred virgins was like tap dancing on the emperor's forehead. Then there are the private assignations, arranged earlier with whispered directions and secret gestures, now played out in quiet gardens, hired rooms, or the curtained rear of a litter carried by tired slaves. These encounters are often more tender. Or at least slower. You notice that some clients, even powerful ones, crave a different kind of attention, someone to listen, to laugh at their sad poetry, to say, "You're clever," without irony. It's a performance just like any other, but softer around the edges. Here's your fringe fact: some prostitutes, especially the more educated or theatrical, offered specialized services like reading omens or composing impromptu poems during the act. Imagine hiring a woman not just to warm your bed but to interpret your dreams or improvise a riddle while disrobing. It's absurd. It's Rome. And sometimes, despite the constant performance, despite the safety masks and money games and the emotionally numbing rhythm of it all, you get burned. You fall in love with a client. It's rare. But it happens. Tonight, one of your friends, the red-haired one with a crooked laugh and a soft spot for tragic senators, is crying behind the latrine, her makeup streaked, heart bruised beyond coin. You've warned her. Everyone has. But love is not a logic puzzle, and even the most seasoned women forget the rules sometimes. You sit beside her in the dark, your back against cold stone, listening to the rustle of fig leaves in the wind. Maybe you share a joke. Maybe you share silence. Either way, the night will pass. It always does. By the time the moon reaches its highest arc, your body aches, your sandals are too tight, and your pouch is either full or not. But in the flickering torchlight, you're still standing, still watching, still working. Because this city never stops. Tomorrow, you'll wake up to the sounds of fishmongers and fruit carts, and you'll do it all again. But for now, as the night winds down and Rome exhales its midnight breath, you find a moment, just a moment, of peace. You finally make your way home, or whatever counts as home in this chapter of your life. Maybe it's a dingy upper floor in an insula where the wooden stairs creak like bones about to snap, and the whole building smells like boiled cabbage and ambition gone sour. Or maybe, if fortune has smiled on you recently, it's a quiet corner rented from a retired midwife who asks no questions and makes strong tea. By now, your feet are blistered and your throat is dry from too much wine and too much forced laughter. You unlatch the door, push it open, and step into stillness. The oil lamp you left earlier has burned low. Shadows dance along the cracked plaster walls, and the single straw mattress in the corner looks like the most luxurious bed in all of Rome. You drop your bag of coins beside your shoes. Maybe you count it, maybe you don't. You've learned not to hope for too much. Some nights are generous. Some nights are not. But if you're lucky, you've earned enough to eat tomorrow, enough to bribe the doorman, enough to keep the landlady from knocking on your door with that awful voice of hers. You begin to unpin your hair. Slowly, carefully. Your scalp aches from the tight curls and braids, and your skin smells of every man who thought you were his secret tonight. You wipe away the makeup. You wash your hands. You look in the cracked mirror, half your face, lit by lamplight, half swallowed by darkness. Who are you now? Are you Flora the temptress? Livia the laughing girl? Julia who dances like a priestess but curses like a soldier? Or just, you? A woman too tired to remember what she was before the night began. Sometimes, you wonder what your life would have looked like if you'd been born in a villa on the Palatine Hill. Maybe you'd be married to a senator. Maybe you'd have 4 slaves and a tutor. Maybe you'd complain about the wine being too warm, instead of whether there's enough coin for wine at all. But you weren't born into that life. You were born here, in the alleys and terraces, in the hum of market stalls and whispered insults and back-alley laughter. You've learned to survive on instinct, wit, and sheer force of will. You stretch out on the mattress. The straw pokes your ribs, but you're too exhausted to care. Maybe you think of your mother, or the girl you once loved, or the gladiator who kissed your hand last summer and then vanished like a dream. You close your eyes and listen to the city. Rome is quieter now. Almost. A dog barks in the alley. Somewhere, a baby cries. A fight breaks out in a tavern 2 blocks away. The sounds are familiar, oddly comforting. They mean you're still here. Still breathing. Still part of the rhythm of this eternal, impossible city. Before sleep pulls you under, you let your mind drift. You imagine another version of yourself, older, perhaps, with her own bathhouse, her own girls, her own rules. A woman who doesn't have to beg or flatter or fear. A woman with silver in her hair and iron in her spine. Maybe that's just a dream. But dreams, in your line of work, are the only luxury no one can tax or take. Your breathing slows. The candle flickers lower. Outside, Rome keeps moving, tireless, ruthless, magnificent. But inside this tiny room, one Roman prostitute ends her day the way so many others have, with silence, with stillness, with the simple, defiant act of rest. Because tomorrow, the cycle will begin again. But tonight, finally, the performance ends. And now, dear listener, you lie there still, half curled on your straw-stuffed mattress, your back aching from hours of walking and leaning and arching and pretending. You stare at the dark ceiling, where soot from your lamp has bloomed into its own tiny galaxy. One more night in Rome. One more night as meretrix, courtesan, whore, healer of loneliness, mirror to men's vanities, holder of secrets. You think of the people you've met today. The merchant who cried quietly while touching your hair, the scribe who recited terrible poetry with trembling hands, the soldier who only wanted to be held. They leave their homes and their wives and their worries behind and come to you, expecting magic in exchange for coin. Sometimes you give it to them. Sometimes you fake it. But either way, they leave a little quieter than they arrived. And now you're alone again. Entirely yourself. No silk, no rouge, no voice pitched for performance. You stretch your arms and legs, every muscle sighing with the day's fatigue. The coarse blanket scratches against your skin, but it's the only thing left that hasn't judged you, tried to buy you, or asked for more than you had to give. Your mind drifts to all the other women in the city doing the same thing, falling asleep in brothels, backrooms, rented corners. Some are young, still full of sharp laughter and stubborn hope. Some are older, wise-eyed and iron-hearted, their past clients now senators or skeletons. You are all parts of the same unseen city, the city that breathes beneath Rome's golden marble and public virtue. You exhale slowly. Your jaw softens. You let your shoulders drop. No one is watching now. You are safe in this silence. It may be brief, but it's yours. Some nights you whisper a prayer, to Venus, to Fortuna, to any goddess who still listens to women like you. Maybe tonight you whisper one again, soft and small. Let tomorrow be kind. Let the men be gentler. Let the coins be enough. Let me wake up. Then silence again. A full, comforting silence that even Rome can't completely smother. You think about love, real love, not the kind you wear like a costume. Have you ever had it? Will you ever find it? Does it matter? You've learned how to mimic it well enough that most can't tell the difference. But in moments like this, when your chest rises and falls with the rhythm of weariness, you can feel the shape of something missing, like the echo of a song you once knew by heart. Outside, the final sounds of the city give way to the hush before dawn. Even the alley cats have paused their nightly brawls. A breeze moves through the open window, stirring the edge of your blanket. It smells like old stone and ash and the faintest trace of rosemary from a neighbor's kitchen. You close your eyes again, softer this time. There's no need to prepare for tomorrow just yet. Let morning worry about itself. Right now, all you need to do is rest. Breathe. Float. You imagine yourself not as a woman of the night, but as something softer, a priestess in a temple no one visits, or a statue worn smooth by time. Eternal. Untouchable. Safe. In this final moment, you are not anyone's fantasy or sin or transaction. You are simply a woman in Rome, asleep under the same stars as emperors and thieves, dreaming your own quiet dreams. The world fades. And sleep, at last, arrives.